3 men, 2 decades, 1 mask. And in every single case, the moment an actor put on that red and blue suit, something happened to their career that never fully reversed. Tobey Maguire became a global icon, then all but vanished from leading roles for the better part of a decade. Andrew Garfield watched his own franchise get quietly canceled out from under him, mid-contract. And Tom Holland, the most successful Spider-Man of them all financially speaking, has openly admitted the role may have permanently boxed him in before he even turned 30. This isn't superstition. It's a pattern, repeated 3 separate times across 3 separate decades with 3 actors who had almost nothing in common except one thing. They all put on the same suit. Let's break down exactly how the curse works. Tobey Maguire, the career that quietly stalled. When Tobey Maguire put on the suit in 2002, he wasn't some unknown discovery. He was already a respected, credible young actor. The Cider House Rules, Wonder Boys, real films with real weight behind them. Spider-Man wasn't his big break. It was supposed to be a bonus on top of an already promising career. Instead, it became the only thing most of the world knew him for. Sam Raimi's trilogy made Maguire one of the most recognizable faces on the planet. Spider-Man 2 is still considered by many critics one of the finest superhero films ever made. But here's the catch. Once the trilogy ended in 2007, Maguire didn't transition smoothly into other leading roles the way a star of his stature might have expected. He took smaller, more grounded parts, Brothers, Pawn Sacrifice, solid work, respectable work, but a far cry from the cultural dominance he'd had while swinging between skyscrapers. The irony is that his post-Spider-Man career wasn't really a reinvention. It was almost a retreat. Back to the quieter, character-driven work he'd been doing before the franchise ever found him, as if the industry and audiences simply couldn't picture him carrying another big blockbuster. Too famous to be forgotten, but seemingly unable to escape the shadow of the mask long enough to build a second act. It took until 2013's The Great Gatsby for Maguire to reappear in a major studio film with real cultural conversation around it. 6 years after he'd last swung through New York City on camera. 6 years. Andrew Garfield, the career interrupted mid-sentence. If Maguire's story is about a career quietly stalling, Garfield's is about a career getting cut off before it could finish its thought. Garfield entered the role from a position of real critical strength. The Social Network had already announced him as a serious actor. When he took over as Peter Parker in 2012, reviewers generally liked his take. More emotionally raw, more visibly wounded, a different kind of Spider-Man. And then came The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Overstuffed with villains, weighed down by studio-mandated setup for spin-offs that never happened, it landed with a critical and commercial thud. Sony's plans for a sprawling Spider-Man universe collapsed almost overnight. A Sinister Six film, a Venom spin-off, an entire franchise built around Garfield's version of the character, gone. Sony didn't formally fire him. They just scrapped the entire franchise around him and built a new one with a different actor, which is somehow worse. To his credit, Garfield's response was to lean hard into serious awards-caliber work. Hacksaw Ridge, Silence, projects that had nothing to do with spandex or web shooters. He'd go on to earn an Academy Award nomination for Hacksaw Ridge, proof that the industry was still willing to take him seriously as a dramatic lead. Even after watching an entire planned franchise built around him quietly disappear. Of the 3, Garfield handled the aftermath best, which says a lot, because what happened to him was arguably the strangest way to lose a superhero franchise in Hollywood history. Tom Holland, the curse at its most complicated. Here's where the story shifts. Because Tom Holland's version of the curse doesn't look like either of his predecessors, and by most accounts, it might be the hardest one to escape. Holland was cast in 2016 at just 19 years old, the youngest actor to take on the role, and crucially, someone with almost no prior career to fall back on. Maguire had cider house rules before Spider-Man. Garfield had the social network. Holland had a handful of smaller credits and the impossible. Respected, but nowhere near enough to give him an independent identity before Spider-Man swallowed it whole. Since then, Holland has starred in 3 solo Spider-Man films, plus multiple Avengers crossovers, billions of dollars at the box office, the most financially successful cinematic Spider-Man by an enormous margin. But that success comes with a strange trade-off. Unlike Maguire and Garfield, who could eventually describe themselves as actors who once played Spider-Man, Holland is still very much inside the role. Future installments already in motion. He's tried to branch out. Uncharted, Chaos Walking. Neither came close to the cultural footprint of his Marvel work. The identity of Spider-Man and the identity of Tom Holland movie star have become so tightly fused at such a young age that separating the two may prove far harder than it ever was for either of his predecessors. Maguire and Garfield got out. Holland is still in. And the longer he stays, the harder the exit gets. Why this character traps actors more than almost any other? So why does Spider-Man specifically do this to actors when other franchise roles don't? Part of it is visual erasure. Spider-Man spends roughly half of every film behind a full face mask. Audiences bond with the character's voice and body language, not the actor's actual face. Which paradoxically makes it harder, not easier, to separate the actor from the role once the mask comes off in real life. These actors spent years being visually associated with a mask that erased their own features on screen, while their real faces became permanently linked to Peter Parker everywhere else. Then there's the sheer scale of cultural saturation. Spider-Man isn't a niche franchise. It's one of the most recognizable fictional characters on Earth, embedded in toy aisles, video games, theme park rides, animated series, lunchboxes, literally everywhere simultaneously. When an actor becomes the live-action face of something that omnipresent, the association doesn't fade the way it might for a smaller franchise. It becomes load-bearing. And finally, timing. All 3 actors took on the role relatively early in their careers, before they'd fully established an alternate public identity strong enough to compete with it. By the time each one wanted to move past the mask had already become the primary thing the public associated with their face. The Spider-Man curse isn't really about bad luck. It's not a haunted costume. It's a predictable pattern. Take a young rising actor, hand them one of the most visually iconic, commercially dominant characters in entertainment history, and then, years later, ask them to convince the world there's someone else entirely. Maguire retreated. Garfield reinvented. Holland is still figuring out if he even can. 3 different actors, 3 different outcomes, and one very expensive mask that none of them have ever fully taken off. Holland's newest film just hit theaters, and the question everyone is asking is whether this is finally where the curse breaks, or whether it just gets more complicated. Hit like Peter Parker would want you to. Drop a comment below. We want to hear what you think. Subscribe for more stories like this one. See you in the next one.